Hello and welcome to the UAE Netherlands Week, presented by the Office of Public and Cultural Diplomacy at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, alongside the Embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in the United Arab Emirates. My name is Noor AlSuwaidi, and I'm moderating this discussion as part of the Youth Talk series in partnership with the Youth Hub Abu Dhabi. And today we have with us Sarah Almehairi and Thomas Trum. So to start our conversation off, I'm going to start with you, Sarah. If you can tell me, as growing up in the UAE or where your background is from, what were your influences, inspirations that led you to make the decision to venture into a career, if it's within the arts or design?
Yeah, sure, definitely. Well, I'm Sarah Almehairi. I'm an artist based out of Abu Dhabi. It's where I live and work. And I have my undergraduate degree from NYU Abu Dhabi in art and art history. So a fun fact that actually did not start out as art, I was a psychology major. And I actually just had a conversation with someone else the other week that was asking me why I made that change. And just to be very vulnerable, it was a very difficult change because my perception of art then and now has been very different. But I'm very happy to have made that change and to be able to pursue a career with the support of the country, but first and foremost, my parents. And as for my artwork, I work primarily with language and materiality and memory, a lot of natural materials that I'm attracted to. And alongside that, I also write a lot when creating. So I consider myself a poet as well as an artist. And while I'm not engaging just in my practice, I love to engage in other artists' practice as well through the Artist Talk series that I started back in April 2020 during quarantine. So I just believe like my practice or the way that I'm living currently is just very multifaceted and engaging with different parts of the scene here. When you talk about hometown, I do say it's Abu Dhabi, but with my mom being American, there is a part of me that I feel some part of me that home is in the States. And a small story that inspired my first exhibition and actually was my undergrad show that was then put on by Carbon 12 Gallery was the influence and me just investigating my grandmother's hometown, which I was playing with the idea of fact and fiction. So when you talk about place, I don't feel it's very grounding to me. It's something that I'm still exploring. It's something that holds fact and fiction, things that are real and unreal, and just navigating that through the work. If I had to put an object to it, it would have to be a blueberry. I know that's very random. Or I would say a ladybug as well. There was one time where I just walked into my great-grandmother's house and the ceiling was filled with ladybugs. And we did this exercise during university where we were trying to like go back as to like where our practice started, and that was a story that came up like subconsciously. So yeah, that's something about home back there. And here I would say home is within the people. Abu Dhabi is a very people-oriented place. It's a very community driven city as well. So I would say home is within the people here.
Thomas?
Yes.
Would you like to share as well?
My name is Thomas Trum and I live in the Netherlands. I actually am based in 's-Hertogenbosch. It's a smaller town in the south of the Netherlands. I actually grew up here, and a number of reasons is, that I'm still based here is because I have a lot of opportunities here in my network. For instance, you can see that I am in a very big building right now because this is an abandoned old factory site that is empty, and I can use it over the summer to work on huge things. So that's very interesting. There is a lot of space here. So I grew up in Den Bosch, and my parents were very interested in art, but also in literature, and I have a few sisters. And I was not the biggest reader of the whole family, and I was the maker of the family. So I'm very much a guy who can make a lot of stuff. And over time, that developed into some studies into sculpture design, stage design, and I actually didn't study arts as well. So I studied at the Design Academy in Eindhoven. So that makes me technically a designer, but I was very much always interested in arts, and especially in painting. I have a small history as it goes to graffiti. So when I was young, I was very, you could find me on the streets with buckets of paint, experimenting a lot of stuff. Always writing, doing calligraphy workshops, and over time that really developed. You know, in graffiti we have this kind of saying like, art school destroyed my graffiti. Well, it happened to me that I don't, graffiti really evolved in what I'm doing now. And I think I'm very much interested in a kind of a language that suits to everybody. So yeah, I did a lot of line drawings, and those were very graphical in a way. And if there appeared to be a letter, like the A or the E or whatever, it was not an abstract form or field anymore. So I try to work in the field of a language that has a very abstract level. I think when I was very young, my parents took me to Krullenmullen Museum every year, once a year. It's, I think, one of the more nice museums we have in the Netherlands. It's at the Hoge Veluwe in a nature reserve with a beautiful sculpture garden. And I really remember that I have seen a caravan made by Joep van Lieshout. And we were staying in a caravan, but this caravan looked like a brain, or looked like an organ. And it was an airplane made by the Belgian artist Panemaremco. Yeah, so when I was young, I really was so amazed that you could do these kind of things, that you could build airplanes that didn't work, but they worked on a different level. Yeah, that makes me very based in the Netherlands, I think. Yeah.
I think it's really interesting, the parallels of, that's obviously why we chose to host both of you today in this discussion, either if it's literature and how the language of graffiti affected your practice, or the way that Sarah's poetry and writing and her objects and the materials tell a story, a narrative. And so from there, let's move on. And Sarah, if you can speak about in more detail about your practice and give us a few examples, and the visuals will appear during the discussion. And then Tomas would love to hear from you as well.
Yeah, so the largest body of work that I have to date would have to be the building block series, which is a sculpture or multiple sculptures made out of wood, acrylic on wood. And that work specifically also came out of undergrad. I am still quite young, so I feel like a lot of my work has stemmed from my last year at university, and it's just about building upon that now. But so the building block series kind of stemmed from playing around. If I had to put a word to it, it definitely is play. I started to collect scrap pieces of wood from the wood shop downstairs that we had, but also from the industrial area in Abu Dhabi called Musafah. And I just started collecting these pieces, and I'm like, I don't know what I want to do with them, but I know there needs to be something done to them. So I would just take my tape and like start painting on some colors with no like reason for the color that I'm choosing. There wasn't like, I'm choosing this specific blue because this is what it represents. It was more like visually, like taking a more formal and visual approach to the work. And so I would take these pieces, I'd paint them, and then start putting them together. And this work is somewhere between a painting and a sculpture, I would say. Yes, they do rest on a wall, but they have this 3D quality to it. It has many layers to them as well. And as mentioned previously, it is a very formal approach to the work. And with every series that I've done with that material, I felt like I was building upon it, hence the name in the title. I started off with just playing with any color. And then in the second series, I started to really pay attention to the color, the natural color of the wood, try to mimic that synthetically with paint. And then I even started to incorporate furniture pieces into it. And recently I've been looking at the nuances of the natural wood itself and trying to mimic that with other pieces that I find, and painting with very thin sheets of wood as well. So that is my first series that I'll be speaking about. And it's funny that you say, Tomas, that you're a designer, because a lot of people that have seen my work have said I have a designer eye. I'm still not sure what that means. Or even the work looks very urban or architectural. So it's really interesting to see hear what people say about the work or what they see in it, because it is very abstract. So it is very, very open to interpretation. As for the second work, that was completed in November 2020. So that is my most recent work. It's called A Filled Form is Familiar. It was created as part of the SEEF program, an exhibition, which is the Salama bint Hamdan Emerging Artist Fellowship, which is a year-long fellowship to just work on your practice and give space to do so, and also get mentorship from RISD faculty as well as alumni of the program as well. And that work took a few months. It was something that I've never done before. I was working with plaster and packaging. I was you may see that a running theme is me just collecting things. But for this work, I came upon a foam package that was very interesting to me. And I just started to cast it over and over again. And I casted it 40 times. And with every cast, I would take something away from the package or add something new into it. But all was from the actual package itself. So so with every change, a new cast would come out of it. And then I put them as part of the exhibition and installation, speaking about change. And 40 also represents the number of days like body takes to trauma or change. So I thought that was a very interesting connection. That naturally I just stopped at 40, and then I realized that 40 was a number of change. It's really just speaking about how one object never really has a beginning or an end to it. Everything is stemmed from one other place, whether we can pinpoint it or not. And how do you make connections between one work to another? Is it because you had just created it before? Or is there another element from possibly like the second cast from the 22nd cast that allows for them to come together and have a relationship? I was also looking at outlines and boundaries, and so I also worked with blue tape on the floor, looking at the negative space that are also created between the casts that are being put together.
That's very interesting that you are seen like that you have a designer eye. I think it's very interesting that you can see an art piece more as a, I don't know, I sometimes try to make an interaction with architecture or sculpture. I don't know, I really feel there is some more to it than only a sculptural value or something. So that's...
For sure, yeah.
Well, for me, I can highlight two kind of works that I did over the last years. My market drawing series is maybe the most seen one, I think. That was the one that I gave the most attention, let's say it like this. It's actually based on a very simple matter that is a felt tip pen, so a marker can make an endless line until it runs out, of course. And if you take a brush that has, how you paint like a classical painting, when you make this kind of stroke, it is really thick on the first slice, and then after 10 centimeters, it becomes hairy and dry. So it really has a different kind of touch to the line. And that gives me the kind of designer influence that I really look into the tools where I work with. So I make all my tools myself. As most of the time I make my paints myself, so I can say I have a lot of how do you say, like, experience in paints. I have some connections with really paint factories that help me, like, well, these ingredients you need to come with this kind of thing you want to achieve. So the market drawings, you see maybe some in the back, I don't know. I don't know if I'm allowed to turn my camera, but yeah, well, it's there are now at the moment really monochrome pieces. They're made with felt tips, and it's actually a combination with high-tech painting and very old school. So the primers I use is really checked from how they did frescoes in Italy, like this lime plaster where they implement pigments in. It's a kind of a way I look into these very old techniques and try to combine them and really try to get them to where we are right now. And they really start to go very big. So this summer I'm working on I'm at the moment working on an exhibition in a very big church in Alkmaar in the north of the Netherlands. And I try to scale things up because the scale part is very interesting here. So if I turn the camera here, you can see there is a frame and there is one there. And you can see my bike is in front of it. It gives a kind of a scale to it. So it's a 5 meter high by 4 meters wide painting. And then again, these paintings, these stretchers are made somewhere in Germany. So yeah, they are very good quality. And let's say I have some pictures here. So this is a spreadsheet where I'm working on. So if you see these are photos of my market drawings that I did last month, I don't know. You have no representation of scale. And of course, this is very bad printed, but in my computer, you cannot see how big it is. So one part that I'm very interested in as well is the scale. So you can scale things up without losing the details. So this is a very big experiment that I'm trying now. So I have 6 more weeks to accomplish them, but I have a good feeling about it. So that's why I need a very big space as well. And and the other thing I might like to highlight is I have an airless paint sprayer that is used by contractors or industry painting. So if you have this kind of factory and you want it to have a white ceiling, for instance, there are some companies that develop these beautiful paint sprayers that enables you to paint this whole area in one day, for instance. And I have some contacts with one of the companies, and they really were impressed by, whoa, the approach you take to painting and to a house painter and use this kind of tools. It's very interesting. So they lent me a machine, and the machine is made for road marking. So it's a sprayer on wheels. so it gives you like thousands of options what you can do with it, and I really tried to narrow it down. And the most recent thing I did was a looping line. So I did in a museum in France, in Lille, I did a 75-meter long wall painting, and it was one line that did several turns. Actually made some kind of a color wheel, so I used like 6 or 7 colors from the whole spectrum, and I looped them into each other. And so these are really these works are really like experiments that I try to project on a question, like, we have this wall and it's 100 meters wide and 5 meters high. Can you come up with something? And every time the wall has some kind of different specs. So there is always the best option, and that's a puzzle that I like to take as a designer or an artist to paint on. It's always a question with architecture, with the whole space. So I don't know, it's that interests me a lot. Let's say it like that. Yeah.
I'm very interested in how you make your own tools. I think that's really fascinating. And I really also resonate with the fact that, like, with every work or every scale or every surface, I would say, is like an experiment of some sort. And that way, just like your work and your practice just elevates with every single piece, because I wouldn't say it's a problem, but it's definitely a challenge that is taken with every opportunity. So I really appreciate you speaking about that. Yeah.
No, thanks. Yeah, I think it's this is just, if you are somewhere, if you are in the United States and you go into Home Depot, you have this so many tools that I have never seen in Europe, And if I was in India sometime, and what they do there is more beyond. There's so much knowledge, and so interesting to combine it, and then I don't say to put it to a next level, but it's interesting to see what you can gain from it.
I found it really interesting about this idea of technology, and even if it's a technology that is used for a house painter, when people say technology, they imagine like a robot AI, but even these different technologies that are developed for construction, manufacturing, and then how contemporary artists adapt those tools and elements and add more creativity to the way that they're applied. It's fascinating. But I did also see that you had some, which I liked from your work, was the electric cables, and you painted the bottom, like the stands, in this vibrant pink color. I think it was a project that you did was it more of a landscape intervention, public? If you want to talk about that a little bit.
And it was my graduation project from the Design Academy. That time I had a studio, and I did some research into printing, so silk screen printing, old printing techniques. My teacher, she was an artist, but she really tried to push me into how to combine this kind of design, what you teach, and art, and how to put it in a context. So with this project, I started a fiction construction company, actually. So I bought a small, very old white van, and I put myself into a white suit, and I got a lot of colors, paint, very quality paints that I can use outside. And I drove around the Netherlands, and what I did actually was looking for places that were a bit abandoned, that were a bit forgotten, that they had a bit of a nasty touch to it. And I did some maintenance. So actually what I did, I cleaned it, I painted it, but then I said to myself, okay, if I do this work, I can say what color it will be. So I had no permission, but I was not, I was sure I didn't vandalize something. So I didn't change the texture, I only did some maintenance, and I changed the color. And these pink planes that were under this electricity cables, they were very high because it was in some low area. Behind it you see as we call it, a dike to keep out the water, So I really tried, and what color is here the best, that you give it some more power to this actually very nice structure. Yeah, that is what I use it pink. And actually all my color use is very intuitive. So I don't think it's
similar to Sarah, very similar. It's like interesting. You're both from all these different parts, and there's a lot of intersection with your practices in different ways. You touched a lot about your schooling, and I've actually been to the academy in Eindhoven. It's a beautiful place, and also to NYU Abu Dhabi, where Sarah graduated from. But just in terms of educational institutions, museums. I know that in the Netherlands, we've got the Rijks and the Van Gogh and the Cobra. And you mentioned also the museum that your family used to take to you. And Sarah, the same thing for you. I'm sure you've been to the Art Foundation in Sharjah and to the Louvre Abu Dhabi. So, do you want to touch on that and how it is influencing you or other artists or the development of the art scene around you?
Speaking about institutions, I feel that in the UAE, there's a wide variety, but with every institution that is there, I believe it adds something to the scene, and it adds to everyone something different. For me, I would say that institutions like Warehouse 421, as well as the Cultural Foundation, are two that I feel most connected to. Warehouse 421 really connects to the community, and supports the community, and that's something that I look for in an institute. And as for the Cultural Foundation, in the past few years, they've turned some of the rooms upstairs into spaces for artists, which is something that artists here have been voicing for quite some time, to allow for space to be able to practice. And so that's something that I also feel connected to, and I'm very appreciative of their support of the artists here. We are in a time that is constantly shifting, and I know we speak about change a lot here, but it is so prominent, and we're so privileged to be able to have so many different places opening up. And specifically for Abu Dhabi, it being a potential cultural and art hub that's going to have a museum island, you could say, and then also still allowing room for other things such as Warehouse 421, or even for artists themselves to start and add to the scene. I think that's key to a successful art scene, is to have variety and for artists themselves to be involved. Dubai is a bit more commercial, but it still adds so much, from Al Sirkal to Jameel Arts Center. And Sharjah has kind of always been there. Sharjah Art Foundation or the Sharjah Art Museum, it's something that's been supporting artists from way before. So it's a key player as well. Going back to my education, having the art gallery at NYU, that's been a great resource, not only for students, but to the community.
Great. Thomas?
Yeah, so in the Netherlands, we have so many museums and so many art institutes and project spaces that sometimes it's hard to choose to where you should go. But now in these kind of COVID times, when everything is starting to open up and the museums are not opening up at the moment, but it's a bit weird, but you really feel that it is, people really need it. People really wait to go to the museums again. And I really understand it. So one of the favorite museums at this moment is, I think, the Bond in Tilburg, that has recently put a new Anish Kapoor in front in this kind of pond. But of course we have a wide variety where you can choose from. If you go to the Rijks or you go to the Stedelijk or which Stedelijk, whatever. Yeah, well, I think I was, what is very interesting, when I was studying, I was doing some research into monochrome fields, and I found this Russian painter, Malevich. He was famous because of this black square painting that he made, and I found out that there was a huge show in Amsterdam in the Stedelijk Museum, I think in 2012. It was about his whole life, and I went there and I came back and I couldn't sleep for like 2 weeks. Yeah, it's a metaphor, but I think I was so impressed by what I have seen, and I went with a few friends that were not really into arts, but yeah, I always like to take people to museum and try to show them how I look to something and that you can have your own interpretation. But they really were a bit offended by this black painting because it was, it's so easy, or it's so, but I think it was so next level. Het was echt, het is heel veel waard, om het zo maar te zeggen. It's super rich museum thing we have. But then you go to Germany, what is 1 hour drive, or you go to Belgium, and there is as well so many nice things to explore. Yeah, it's very nice.
So I didn't ask you guys a question in the beginning I should have asked you. Sarah, have you been to the Netherlands? And Thomas, have you ever been to the United Arab Emirates? Sarah?
No, I have not, but it's on my list.
Well, now you have a new friend to show you around.
Oh yeah, and I want to see this face.
Yeah, you are welcome to, if it's possible, you are welcome anytime. I have never been to the Emirates. I have one time flew on, I think, Dubai airport, of course. But that was a crossover to India, and I really, really enjoyed the view because there were no clouds and you can see this whole desert and this oil plants and all these oil tankers that were in the Gulf waiting. That was so incredible. Yeah, that was amazing to see. Yeah.
So we look forward to showing you around here as well. I think as we wrap up, maybe the last question, as the UAE welcomes the world for Expo 2020, and there's so many thematics, and we're looking at the future as well of potentially also these ideas of what is sustainability, and I think a lot of what we're thinking about now, especially during the pandemic, is about technology. Like we're all on our computers, and Dubai is also opening the Museum of the Future. I would just want to ask, what do you guys predict for 2050 if you were to have a prediction?
Yeah, it will be interesting. I sometimes have visions, like I try to push myself to think really big. And one thing I noticed is that I cannot say what I'm doing next year. Okay, I will have some ideas about the coming 2 years, but not in 5 years. So 30 years for sure. But one thing that really inspired me is going interplanetary, so going to other planets. And I always say to people, to illustrate the way I try to think is, let's say we go to the moon with some tractor mowing machine, and we put it on the moon and we drive circles for non-stop. You can draw on the moon and everybody can see it all the time. So this is something, of course, we should not destroy the moon and this whole surface, but this way of thinking and try to shape the whole universe, or if this question comes to me, I would definitely think about making a drawing on the moon.
That sounds fantastic. So Sarah, what about you? I mean, it is like it's a fantasy dream. Like, what could it be? You know, so.
I mean, I definitely can't match drawing on the moon. But when I think to my practice and what's currently going on with me collecting and like wanting to preserve so much, I wonder what it would mean to keep on collecting and then 30 years down the line, like reevaluate the value and the use of such things. That's something that I'm still trying to understand as to why I'm interested in keeping a few things, whether they may also be seen as trash sometimes, or things that should be discarded or of lesser value. So when we're thinking about technology, I don't know, I feel like I just go completely the other way. I look at more of the natural things that I can find, that I would love to keep working with. And we don't know like how much of that will be available in 30 years time or 50 years time. But it's great to collect and preserve and reassess the situation in that time of 2050. It seems like so far away, but I know it's just going to creep up on us in a matter of seconds. So yeah.
So I'd like to just say thank you so much for your honesty and vulnerability and sharing, and of course, and thank obviously the Office of Public and Cultural Diplomacy and the Ministry and the Embassy of the Netherlands and also the Youth Hub for allowing me to have the joy of interviewing and chatting and talking to you both. And hopefully we can host Thomas here, and Sarah goes to the Netherlands and tells us how that experience is. And thank you.
Thanks. So
thank you all.
It was an honor to join, but I just realized that one of my big inspirations maybe is where you are located. Like if you know, of course, almost islands, I think you made them with the Dutch companies, actually, that are very good with water. And just think about it. Like if you think about the moon and this kind of project, it's amazing, actually.
So Thomas, maybe you can re-answer your question now. We'll add it in. Go.
Re-answer my question? What?
I mean, re-answer your answer.
50. No, I think, yeah. I think what I would try to achieve.
If anything happens on the moon now, they're gonna blame you.
Yeah. Let's stay in contact. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you as well to all the partners and organizations that are tied to this talk today. And also a big thank you to Noor and Tomas for your time. It was great getting to meet you, Tomas, and hopefully we'll see you here soon or meet there. But yeah, let's stay in touch.